Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the beginner's track of the Power BI Bootcamp. My name is Mark Wilcock. This is the first session. We are recording the event and we will make the recordings available. I'll be talking about data modeling in Power BI. And as you can see, I'm not the original speaker. Srivya has had to pull out at the last moment, but I'm going to be covering exactly the same material. And just a reminder what's coming on, we've got 12 sessions, both in the beginner's track and there's also an advanced track. Then the session after this is one that goes well with this session because I'm going to be talking about data modeling, and data modeling and DAX go hand in hand. Hasham, in an hour's time, we'll be talking about DAX. This is purely a demo. It's very much a beginner course, and so let's get started. What we are going to do is we are going to start with an empty Power BI like this, and we are going to build a data model from scratch, bit by bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with this data. This data is some fictitious data about a London coffee trading company, and we are going to use this. I've generated it and I've created it. We're going to take each one of these tables, data sets in turn, bring it in, have a look at that, build up the data model. This is a public link on GitHub, so if you want to get the materials now or later, I've already put it into the chat window. I'll put that in again. Another thing about this talk is that I was supposed to be moderating it, so we don't have a moderator at the moment, so it means that I might not see things in the chat window immediately. Anyway, let's get started. Let's look at this data. What we've got is we've got a set of data. It's coffee trading company, and it's got a set of 16 products here. They're all various sorts of drink, as you can see, and we've got some information about them. How much the unit cost, how much it cost us to make them, the unit price, how much we're going to sell them for. But they're all drinks, 16 drinks, and I've put them into 4 coffee product types and some product categories. We've got a set of customers as well, 10,000 customers, and I'll talk about those customers later on. And we've also got a set of transactions. We've actually got 100,000 transactions, so big that GitHub won't show it, but I'm just going to click on View Raw here. And what this does, it shows me the data. This data is in a CSV file on GitHub. It shows me the raw data. This is the first table that I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to take a copy of that link to the raw data, and we're going to get started. Move that out of the way, and I'm going to bring up Power BI, and we're going to bring that data in. We're going to look at our transaction data first of all. So I've launched Power BI at the moment. I don't have any data inside of it. Let's go and bring some data in. So I'm going to go to Get Data, and I'm going to go to Web. Even though this is a text file, then we say we use a web, and it will work out that it's a text file. So I'm putting in that link to the transaction CSV on GitHub. And what it will do is it'll show me a quick preview of the information. That looks good. Let's just click on Transform Data, and let's have a look at it in the query editor. So we've got a table transaction. We're looking at the top 1,000 rows. What we've got is an ID for the transaction. It looks like a unique ID. We've got the transaction date. We're actually looking at the 4 years until 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 20. We've got 3 years worth of data. We know that a customer did a transaction on that date. We know the product that they bought, and we know the number of units. That's what we've got so far. So let's go and close and apply and bring that data in. So we're going to bring these data in table by table and build up our data model. That's bringing that data in, all the 100,000 rows into Power BI. And we've got our transaction table here. if we have a look at it. And so what I'm going to do here is I always like to bring something in, show a visual, just to prove that my model is working as I expect. So today is all about data modeling. It's about tables, relationships, it's about star schemas, about snowflakes, about patterns of putting tables together, and about why we should do data modeling. It's not about visualization. So the visualization I'll do will be very, very basic, just to prove that we can visualize something. It's not about bringing data in or cleaning or shaping it. The data that I've got here is very clean and in the correct shape for us to build a data model. Obviously, life is not really like that, but what we want to do is focus on the data modeling. So let's come along and let's say I want to have a look at the number of units. And if we have a look at that, if we click on that, it's going to give us this particular value, 287,304. What is that? We've got 100,000 transactions, and some of those transactions are 2 units, 3 units. In total, there's 287,000 and odd units. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to put a format that number so that when we look at it in the tooltip, that's a bit better to read. And we might want to say, actually, what I want to do is I want to do that. I want to come back here and I'll just remove that. I want to maybe actually look at those number of units by product. And so what we've got is we've got the number of units by our product key. So we can see that some products have more units than others. We don't know anything about the product yet because we haven't brought in yet the product table. So that's what we've got so far. Let's build our first measure, and a measure that I always like to build. A measure is a calculation that's done on the fly. And the calculation I want is a simple one. It's going to be called the number of transactions. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say, move that out of the way, like this, just move that out of the way. Sorry. Wires getting in the way there. I'm going to say, basically, I'm going to create a new measure here, and I'm going to call that new measure, when it comes up, let me make that a bit bigger. I'm going to call that new measure number of transactions. And what I'm going to say is that's going to be equal to the number of rows. Count rows is a DAX function that counts the number of rows in a table. So by counting the number of rows in the transaction table, I can count the number of transactions. So let me just click on that. And then what I've got down here is I've got a new measure, I'll put it in red, the number of transactions. So that's my first measure. That's our first DAX calculation that we've done. And what I'm going to do as well, I'm just going to come to this visual here, and I'm going to put on my number of transactions as well as my number of units. And I might want to make that a clustered column chart because we can't really have them. And I might want to maybe make them different data colors so they stand out a bit more. So what we've done is we can see our number of transactions in red and our number of units. So a bit of information, but we really need more. Let's have a look at our model pane. And so for our model pane, we've got one transaction table with one measure, but it kind of looks a bit of a lonely table. What we want to do is find out more about those products. So let's go in and bring in the products table. So as a reminder, the products table is sitting in, we come back to our GitHub. I just go back. Our products table is in our coffee, and I'm going to click on the products table. There we go. That's what it looks like. We've got the product key. That's the matching key for the transaction table, and lots of information about the product table. So again, I'm going to click on raw, and that gives me the URL for the raw data. I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm going to come in to go into get data again from the web, because I'm passing in a web URL. Power BI will look at that and it will work out that it's a text file on the web. It'll show us the data. Let's just look at that in the query editor. And as I said, basically what we've got is clear, very clean data. we might say, actually, in this particular instance, I'm not interested in the weight of the products, but I am interested in the unit price, unit cost. So I've got that. So I'll just make one small change to that, then I'll close and apply, and we can start bringing that data in now. So now what we've got up here on the right hand side is we've now got two tables. We've got product and we've got transaction. And what I'm going to do is look at this in the model here. So now I'm on the model pane. Power BI has three panes, by the way: report pane, where we build our visuals. We have data pane, which allows us to very quickly see our data in tables. It's very useful for quickly doing that. And model pane, where we'll be spending a lot of time today, because that is where we really build our data model. Now, what we can see is our transaction table, as we had before, and we can see our product table, our kind of plan view with all the columns. And what Power BI has done is put in a relationship for us. And what it's doing is this line relationship connects the two columns product key. And what it's saying is that Power BI believes that this is the common linking column here. So in our transaction table, which is what we call a fact table, we'll talk about that later on, we have information about the numbers, the quantities that we're going to measure, the number of transactions, the number of units, and so on. And then we have a linking key, sometimes called a foreign key, which is just the identifier for the product, in this case, the product key. In the product table, which we call the dimension table, we've got a table that has got product key. That is unique in the product table. We have just one row without product key, and then we have everything else about the table, about the product, the name, the type, the category, and so on. So if we had a look at that in the data pane, we can see our product key is unique. This is our dimension table. The product key is unique. Once we know our product key, we know everything else about our product. So that's a dimension table. Typically, dimension tables, they kind of describe the things, and a fact table tells us about events. So the fact table, the transaction table, is basically often has a date, like this one does. It has a kind of, we have 100,000 events going on there, which is a transaction with a particular product key and a particular customer code. If we want to know more about the product key, we use we bring in the dimension table and we link them up. So let's see what that gives us, linking up this table in this relationship. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come along to this text that we've built before. And what I'm no longer going to put the product key from the transaction table in the axis. I'm going to put the product, I'm going to put the product name on the axis. And now what we can see is we can understand a bit more about our products. No longer we can understand the name of the products. We can see that orange juice is our bestseller over time, for example. What we've done here is that we are having a visual that has got columns from different tables. So this has got the product name on the axis, and the product name comes from the product table. It's got the number of units and the number of transactions on the values. They come from the transaction table, and we haven't had to do a VLOOKUP or anything. Power BI knows exactly what to do to join those. Now we brought that in, we can tidy up our model a bit. And the way that we can do that is because actually we can look and we could actually bring product key onto the axis, but that product key there is just a kind of internal key that our system used to kind of match them. We're never really going to want product key on a visual. It doesn't mean anything to our users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along to the model pane, and I'm going to click on the product key here, and I'm just going to hide it. And I'm going to do exactly the same with the product key on the product table. It's got to be there because it links our two tables, but we're never going to use it in a visual, so I'm going to hide it. What does that mean? It means that now when I look at the field list here, here's a product table and here's a transaction table, but you can see that they no longer show the product key column. That stops us from ever putting on, we never need it. So we've built the basics of our data model, and we've got two tables, a dimension table called product, a fact table called transaction, and we've got one relationship, a very standard relationship between the product and the transaction. This relationship is one to many. We've got the product is on the one side, the transaction is on the many. This asterisk means many, which means that obviously a transaction can appear, a product can appear many times in a transaction. Lots of customers buy orange juice. This little arrow here shows that the filter runs from the product to the transaction, which means that what's happening here, our products here on our axis, orange juice is filtering the number of units. So this blue bar here gives us the number of units for orange juice. This gives us it for apple. That's what the filter means, and that's how that works. What we can also do is we can come along and we can say, actually, I'm going to want to look at that maybe by product type. So I'll bring product type onto the axis. And now what we've done is we can look at it at a higher level than just the individual products themselves. And we can see, for example, that juice is our highest product type. And when we have two fields on any axis on a visual, what we can also do is we can drill down. So for example, when we've got the two fields on, what happens here is that these fields appear. Actually, it might be easier if I just make this a bit bigger, then we can see them. They're not kind of overwriting the title. We've got these drill down buttons. Those drill down buttons appear and whenever we have more than one field on the axis. And it just allows us to drill down. For example, the forked arrow will take us from product type into product type and product name. We can drill up with this. This double arrow will take us to the next level, the product name level, and ignore the product type level. That's useful sometimes when we're looking at over a set of years, kind of general seasonal usage or variation. And this little one here, this drop down arrow here, it's a toggle arrow, and when it's on, we can drill into, by clicking on something, we can drill into T, and so we can see this is just the T category. So we've seen putting a couple of fields on, and we can get hierarchies out. So far so good. What we've got is we've looked at our data by product, but we've also got a date on there. Let's have a look at that. So what I'll do is I'll come and I'll create a new visual here, and I'll look at maybe our number of transactions by our transaction date. And that will be maybe better as a visual. So what we've got there is we've got a lot of transactions. Interestingly, we've got some sort of spike here, or something that's either a data quality issue or maybe there was some special promotion that day. But you can see our coffee company is doing quite well over the 3 years from 2018 to 2021. The sales have roughly increased. If you wanted to make that clearer, we could add a trend line. I'll just take that off in a moment. But what we could also do is say, how does that look for the various sales? So I can take my product type, for example, and put that on legend. And we get a rather messy visualization, because really what we want to see is we don't want to see it really every day. We want to see it at a higher category than that. We want to see it by year, quarter, month, for example, or day of week. Now, at the moment, what we don't have is we don't have those. So we're going to do that in a couple of ways. The first way that we can get a calendar is to go into File, Options, and then into Options. And then I'm going to go, when it comes up, into the current file data load and switch on auto date time here. And so I've just checked that box there. Now, Normally you will have that on. I switch it off by default, but for this one I just switched it on. So normally people have it on, but I'm just going to say that's good and okay. And what happens here is that when we do that, we get this little arrow here and we get a date hierarchy on our transaction. Power BI then builds a small, what's called a calendar table, a date table for each time there is a date in our data set. We've only got one date in our data set here. So what that means here is that I can go and choose my date hierarchy, and in this case, better to see it as visuals. And what we can do is we can look at it by year and by quarter, by month, day. It's given us this lovely hierarchy. So again, I can drill down into the hierarchy and see my sales by quarter. So that's one way of doing it. What I might want to do though is might want to say, look at my sales by day of week. And at the moment, I can't do that because my hierarchy only gives me year, quarter, month, and day. So this inbuilt hierarchy that Power BI gives is great, good to get started and often very useful, but sometimes we need more than that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come along and I'm going to say File. I'm going to go back to options and settings and just switch that off. And then we're going to bring in our calendar table. So let me do that. I go to current file data load and I'm going to switch off that auto data. And we go back to our very messy, we've only got, if we look at our date, you can see that we've just got the, we've lost our year, quarter, month, day. Let's fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come along to my data set. Let me just go back to that. And I'm going to this time going into a calendar table. Calendar tables are an essential feature of any data model. And whether you can build one in many ways, it doesn't matter. What matters is what it looks like. What we've got here, as you can see, is we've got a row for every date and every date in our period of interest, which is from 2018 through to 2021. And it's got to be a contiguous file. Even if we weren't trading on Saturdays and Sundays, in the calendar table, what we need is we have to have every date, because the time intelligence functions that Power BI relies on expects when you give the calendar table for it to have every date in the period, no missing dates. So here we've got the date, and we've got information about the date, the month, the quarter, the year, as before, but also I've got the day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. And that's extra information that inbuilt table didn't have. Often calendar tables have company holidays, bank holidays, all sorts of things, financial years as well, and they're just extra columns. But we're taking quite a small, simple calendar, and I'm going to click on raw to get the raw data, click on the URL, copy that, and let's bring in our calendar table. So again, I'm going to go to get data, and again, web, and we'll kind of rinsing and repeating, putting in that URL, and let's have a look at that calendar table. We've got a preview. I'm going to click on transform data, and we'll just have a look at it in here. We can see that looks like a reasonable calendar table to me. I'm happy with it. I don't think one of the things is maybe this particular key I don't want. This is just actually I do want that key, so I'll leave it there. So good, we've got our data. I'm just going to have a quick little flyby here, close and apply. And we're going to bring that calendar table in. And here we are, we can see that's our calendar table. Now, let's do something here. Let's say that we want to come along, instead of having transaction date in there, I'm going to have the year quarter. And when I do that, something odd happens. It's not what I intended to see. It looks like we have exactly the same number of transactions, 100,000 transactions every quarter of the year. And we know we've got 100,000 transactions and all, so something is going wrong. And let's understand what that is. what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say what the problem that we've got is that we haven't yet got a connection between our calendar table and our transaction table. Power BI was nice enough to put in this relationship for us. If it hadn't, we could put it in ourselves. But when it brought in the calendar table, it didn't do that. It doesn't by default. So what we want to say actually is that this calendar date is related to the transaction date there. So just by dragging and dropping, we could do that. What I'm going to do is just to show you another way, I'm going to delete that relationship. And what we can do is we can do that another way. I can click on Manage Relationships and I can say I want a new relationship. And that relationship is going to be between my calendar table and my transaction table. Using my date on my calendar table is going to match the corresponding transaction table. It is a one-to-many. One calendar date will have, the transaction table will have a date many times in it. We'll obviously have many transactions on the same day, and the calendar table is single. This is the standard relationship between them. The calendar will filter the transaction. So let's click on that. And I'm just going to close that. And I'm going to go back to my, oops, that didn't happen, did it? Yes, it did. There we go. There we go. I'm going to go back to my model, and that's looking a lot better. We can see that we've got different amounts on different quarters. Let's just go and clean up our data model. Since we've got the date here, in fact, it's probably best to show you this. Since we've now got the date, this date here, and we've got the transaction date, really this is going to be the same column, and we don't really want them both. There's no need to have them both in our field list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the model and I'm going to come to my transaction date and hide it. Whenever I want to put a date on, I'm going to use this date in the calendar table. That makes a bit more sense because I've got the month, the quarter, the year in the same table. So let's go back to that. And so what we've got is we've got our calendar table working, and what we might notice about this is that the data in this chart is not in maybe the order that we expected. If we have a look at, and that's because when Power BI builds a chart, a bar chart, it'll always build it high bars to low bars. So when we look at the sort order here, what we've got is it's sorted by the number of transactions. That's the height of our bars, and it's sorted descending. Actually, we want to sort it by year, quarter, and what we want to do is we want to sort it ascending. So now we've got our data from 2018 Q1 on the left to 2020 Q4 on the right. That's the data in the right order, and we can see that our number of transactions is increasing, which is great. Lovely. Okay, we talked about bringing in that calendar table because we wanted to show how many transactions there were on a day of the week, or some days more popular than other. So let's go and do that. Again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on my number of transactions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my day of the week. And again, it shows basically high to low because that's what Power BI does with bar charts. So let's just sort that ascending, and we're going to sort it by the day of the week. Now, first things, it shows that we have quite an even way of we're doing business pretty well every day of the week. What I'll quickly do is I'll put on the data labels, and we maybe want to say, actually, maybe rather than that, I'm going to say in none. So we actually see the number. And again, what I'm going to do, because with my number of transactions, is I'll just put that thousands separator in there so we can read that. Lovely. Good. One of the things you might notice is that this is a strange week because what's happening, even though we've ordered it by the day of the week, the day starts on Friday and it finishes on Wednesday. Maybe that would be nice, we'd have lots more weekends, but what Power BI has done, perhaps not unreasonably, is to sort it alphabetically. Although we understand those are days of the week and should be sorted chronologically, Power BI just sees that as another column, and columns are sorted alphabetically. So let's fix that. What we did with the calendar table when we brought it in is we brought in a couple of columns called key columns. So if I go to that calendar table, what we've got, and we have a look at it, we can see that I did bring in the day of the week column, but I also brought in this column called day of the week key. 1 is Sunday, 2 is Monday, 7 is Saturday. Likewise, when we brought in the year month, actually it's done that as a date, so it hardly matters, we brought in the year month key. So, and actually let me have a look at this. We brought in month, and it's brought in the month key, 1 for January, 12th for December. So what I'm going to do in my model is I'm going to come along to my calendar, and I'm going to go to the day of the week, and in the properties it gives me the advanced section. It gives me this sort by column. By default, columns sort by themselves, but I'm just going to say I want to sort the day of the week by the day of the week key. And when I come back and now look at that, then our visuals are automatically in the right order, going from Sunday to Saturday, and that's good. So while we are here, what we want to do is a couple of things. We need these month keys in there, and we can see them here and also year month, but they need to be there because they need to sort the corresponding columns, the year month, the day of week, and the month, and but we don't need to see them in our field list. So let's do a couple of things. Let's come over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the year month is going to be sorted by our year month key, and our month is going to be sorted by our month key. Where is it there? And what we can also say is those three key fields, we need them there for sorting, but we're never going to build a visual on them, so we'll hide them all. I'm just going to hide those three keys. So now when we look at our calendar table, it's looking a lot better. It doesn't have those key fields in here, even though they are doing work in the background. And as well, if we notice the transaction table down here, it doesn't have the transaction date because we've hidden that. Good. So now if we go back to our model, it's starting to look like what we call a star schema. What we have in a star schema, if we have a table in the middle, it's called our fact table. It's a long table. This has got 100,000 rows in it. And I say it's got the things that we want to measure, like the number of transactions, but and it's got a linking key to all the things that we care about, how we want to describe it. So it's got a linking key, product key, that links to product, and all the details about our product are in our product dimension table. Our product dimension table has a short table, just one row for every product, but has all the details about the product. So let's build on that, and what we're going to do here is that we are going to add to that and bring in the customer table. We can see that we've got a customer code here, but we don't know anything more about the customer. So if I wanted to come along and build another page and look at, let's say, the number of transactions by customer, all I can see is that basically we've got customer with the code Z10470. That's a unique code of our customer, was the one who had most transactions, but we know nothing at all yet about him or her or where they live or anything like that, or even so let's sort that out. So again, what we're going to do is we are going to come to our data again. And as a reminder, if you just joined, I put the data up on this GitHub data set so that you can, it's publicly available, so that you can, if you want to repeat this at some later time, you can do this. So again, I'm going into my coffee data set. And this time I'm going to have a look at my customers. Now, I ought to explain that my customers are a strange lot. I've got exactly 1,000 customers, and the customers come from, they all live in London, This MSOA code is a geographical unit location. And in fact, I have to tell you that all these are locations in London. We'll have a look at those later on. They've all got their unique code called a Z code, and they all come from all sorts of different countries in the world, as you can see. But despite coming from all over the world, they have first very English-like first names and last names. And these are actually kind of randomized names coming from our ONS, Office of National Statistics survey of the top 100 popular names in 2019 in England, first names and last names. So that's our strange customer data set, but the customer is always right. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our 1,000 customers, the link, and of course, we're going to rinse and repeat as we've done before. We're going to bring that data in. And I'll click on the URL, I'll bring that data in, and we'll have a quick look at it. Ooh, and I made a mistake there, which is good because it's the same mistake as you will make. Let me just cancel that. What I did there was I came to the course data set, and what we've got here is here's the data, but this is nicely formatted by GitHub for us into a nice HTML table. What I forgot to do was actually to click on the raw link there. That's the raw data as it looks if it was a text CSV file sitting on my desktop. So this time I've got the raw rather than the formatted. So I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to go into get data. I'm going to go into web, and this time it will work. I'll do my raw data set, and let's bring that data in. Let's have a look. I'm going to click on transform data. And the first thing that we'll notice is that Power BI here hasn't detected that the first row, this row, is the column headers. Usually it does because it looks at the data and says, okay, the first row is a text data type, and then after that, all the remaining rows are a date or a number. So it can usually work out that it's got column headers. So in this case, what we have to do is we have to tell it. I'm just going to click on, in the query edit, click on use first rows headers. And that's good. So we can see what we've got is we've got the customer code. That's a unique code of our records. You can see from here, it's absolutely unique. We can look at the MSOA code, and we can see that people live in different areas, our countries. Most of our customers apparently come from Portugal, closely followed by the UK and the US. And our most popular customer is called Oliver. Strangely enough, that was the most popular baby name in 2019. And would you believe it, that Smith and Jones are our two most popular last names. So we've got our customer data. Let's bring it in, close and apply. And so it is coming in now. And what I'm going to do is we can see in our field list that we've got our customer table. Here we go. That's great. And what we can do is we can look at the modeling pane, and what we've got, just click on that here, is we've got our customer table there. Let me just bring it down here, and I'll just maximize that, and I'll maximize that so that we can all see it. Okay. There we go. So this is beginning to look a bit more like that star schema. Transaction in the middle, we've brought in another customer table, and that customer table has a unique key for our customer name, customer code, and then all the other information about the customer, including the country that they come from and where they live, this MSOA code. So what we can do now is, first of all, again, this customer code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to hide the customer code in the transaction table. I'm going to say, we don't need it there because we've already got it in our customer table. We don't need it twice, but I'm not going to hide it in our customer table. Sometimes I might want to, because we might have two John Smiths in our customer. Sometimes I might have to refer to somebody as their customer code. But given that, what I can do now is, let me just create a new page. And maybe, again, I'm interested in my number of transactions. and I'm interested in them by my customer country. So now we can have a look at it by customer country. As I said, that's almost the same as those green bars we saw there. But maybe I'm interested in looking at it by country, but also maybe I'm interested in saying I'm going to my product type, and I'll put my product type on my columns. And what I've got here, and I'll just make it a tiny bit neater, I'll get that style non-minimal, and I'll put on some conditional formatting. I'll put on some, on the number of transactions, I'll put them data bars on. And what I'll do is stick on some advanced controls so that dark blue doesn't obscure the labels. I'll make that a lighter blue. And I'll click on OK. So what we've got there is we've got basically a view on how people in different countries, what particular products they go to. And again, just to remind you, if I wanted to put the product name down there, in fact, it might be easy if I can put product type up here, country there, and product name, and then I can always look at my analysis of my T. Fortunately, not too much to define from that. When I randomized this data, I didn't make it particularly interesting, but you get the point that we can now look at two different variables, products, types, and names against data from our customer table. Good. So far, so good. One of the things that we've shown is that we've been able to bring in to more than one different field here into our rows, and we get these drill down buttons here, so we can drill up and drill down. But sometimes what we want is we want to create a hierarchy of data, and so let's just do that. And if you remember, when we had our little built-in calendar table, there was a lovely year, quarter, month hierarchy. Now we brought in our own table and our custom table, we haven't got that. So let's build that hierarchy. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come along to the data modeling pane. I'm going to go to calendar, and I'm going to go to my calendar year and insert properties. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, actually, calendar year, what I want to do is I want to create a hierarchy. It's called it the year hierarchy, but what I'll say is actually, I'm going to call it my calendar hierarchy. I'm going to have one, and it's going to be year is the top level, but I can add, oops, didn't need to do that, select column to add. I'm going to add my quarter, I'm going to add my month, and finally, I'm going to add my date. I'm going to apply level changes. So I've created a hierarchy called calendar hierarchy, and with these, let's have a look at how that works. So what that does is it gives us a nice navigation path. What I'll do is I'll take product out of there, and now we've got this calendar hierarchy up here. That's what we've created. Now when I drag this onto the rows, we don't need to drag each of the fields. We can just drill down into, say, Q4, into December, and we're seeing all the details. So it's very nice to create hierarchies. They give our users easy navigation paths to navigate down from one. And they don't just need to be calendar. You could have organizational, geographic hierarchies. So far, so good. Another thing that we might like to do is when we look at our product table, we might like to say, let's just go and have a look at our product table. We might like to say, okay, the data gave us our 16 products, and it also grouped us into product type and product category. But we might say those groupings are not the ones that we want. Actually, I would like to group my products into different categories that I like. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, actually, what I want to do with product, I'm going to put my product name, and I'm going to say a new group as a new group. There it is. And what I'm going to call this, I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to call this my product brand. Maybe I'm a marketer and I want to kind of brand my products in various ways. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call these my product brands. I'm going to call this possibly this is my, I'm going to group those, and I'm going to call this is my healthy brand. And what I might do, and I'm going to say okay for that, and then I'll add my lemon. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let me go. So let me just go into my product brand and edit the group. I didn't make me press OK. Start again. I've got my healthy brand, and then I might want to say Americano cappuccino and English breakfast. I'm going to say, I'm going to group those together, and I'll say that's my luxury. And then I'm going to say, actually, that's good. And I'm going to put all the others in another group, just contains all the other group values. And so what I can do now, I've got this new column here called product brand, which is the products organized in the way that I want. So again, I can come up to my report and say, actually, maybe I'm not interested in country on my columns. What I'm interested in is I'll put my product brand on my columns there. And that's my free product brands there. And again, just to make the point, if I wanted to put product name there as well, we get a nice hierarchy both on the rows and the columns. So I can drill down on the columns from my product brands into my product names. Good. Right. There is one last thing I want to show, and then I'll open the floor to questions in a couple of minutes. So far, what we've done is we've built this very classic star schema. And a star schema has this fact table in the middle, and it's got directly connected to three-dimension tables: product, customer, and calendar. But the thing about our customers is we've got a very detailed map point, geographical point of where they are, but that doesn't tell us much about the region of London, which part of London they live in. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my data here, and I am going to go into my coffee data set, and I've got this thing called London MSOA. And what that does, it has that MSOA code, that geographical point, and it's got some more information about that code. There are 33 different boroughs in London, and it'll tell us the borough that they're in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, remember to click on my raw this time. That's my raw data. I'm going to bring that data in, and I'm going to go into get the data. Again, web, I'll very quickly bring that data in, put it in there, and I am going to click on that. That's our data. I need to transform the data because I need to promote those column headers to be the first row to be the column headers. I'm going to click on use first row as headers. I'm going to call this London. Let's just call it London MSOA. I'll take that off. That looks good to me. I'm going to click close and apply. And what I'm going to do here is going to bring in that table. And again, Power BI has very nicely connected it up for us. But what it's done here is it's connected it to the dimension table, which is absolutely right. But now what we've got is we've got a dimension table, London MSOA, that isn't connected directly to the transaction table. And we call this pattern a snowflake schema. Let's just do something here. I'm going to hide MSOA code in customer. I don't need it in both. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my data set, and instead of looking at my data here by my calendar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my London MSOA and look at the different London boroughs. As I say, London is split up into 33 different boroughs, and I can see where my customers live. And there we go. Great. It's now 10 to 8. I've spoken for 50 minutes. I'll give a few minutes for questions and for everybody else to have a break. Let me just say that in 10 minutes time, the follow-on to this, Hasham is talking about DAX, and I've done one tiny DAX query, but data modeling and DAX go hand in hand together. That's really good. So I really recommend that you stay and watch the kind of part B of this, which is how to write the DAX calculations. I've written this one small DAX calculation, which was all to do with the number of transactions. I could have written DAX calculations for the total revenue, the cost of goods, the profit margin, and Hasham will be showing us how to do that. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to look at the chat window. If any of the moderators wants to jump in and ask questions, then go ahead. Please post the YouTube channel link. I'll do that where you upload the, yes, we will certainly do that. Are there any other questions either in the chat window or from the moderators? Yes, Kamal, you've got your hand up. Great. Okay, if there are no questions, what I'll do is I will give you 10 minutes and we'll join Hasham in 10 minutes time and we'll talk about DAX, beginning DAX.